generation that if you look at a picture of atom level 100, we looked at West civilization, and we see what do you call the processes of evolution if you have to go by the scientific theory. But I think that is just historical anyway. If you go you look at that one and the processes, I think that one I made my mind to you that as for human beings, we know that it's not any, we did not evolve from any primitive monkey-like creature, but we were created by God. But we have the theory, so we expose you to the scientific theory of evolution as well. But you see that now, as I said, this theory holds that humankind gets better and better each new generation. Yeah, because of the fact that things are not static, things are dynamic, you see. So that's why things change. Some of us, we see the schools that we attended, I don't think the same school that our children are attending now. Yeah, if you look at the facilities, and even now we are in modern era that even some when you go to so many schools, those in the preschool, those in the KG and the rest are even watching, they watch television, they watch a lot of our time. These things were not there. So now you see a lot of changes. Look at the now, some of the houses or some of the buildings that we have. At first, you will not even see those who no those who were able to use blocks, yeah, blocks to build were only few. But now see, that was the time that they were using mud. So we had mud, yeah, mud in the construction of. But now you see there are a lot of changes. Okay. So in other words, man makes progress or becomes more civilized with the passage of time. So I think this theory is very simple. That is the underlying view. Yeah, that man makes progress or becomes more civilized with the passage of time. Now look at the children, our children. You see, those I will not even say the babies, even yeah, they can now when they get the phone, you will see. You see, so those under 5 can even call. So you see that things have changed, and so we are saying that man makes progress or becomes more civilized with the passage of time. And this new theory places emphasis on man's own ability to do things for himself rather than on divine providence. So that is, in other words, that's what the focus of this theory, that man, yeah, so the man is capable. Each new generation builds upon the achievements of the previous one and must therefore do better than its predecessor. And so this progress is slow and gradual, but it is continuous. There are no permanent stops to it, and progress is the necessary product of successive generations. And so the prevailing providence theory of history was first tempered with in the early years of the 18th century by such thinkers like Italian jurist and philosopher Gian Battista Vico and the French philosopher. Yeah, so now Vico began the secularization of the philosophy of history by putting forward a new view that God does not intervene directly in historical events or human affairs. That the view of Vico, that God does not intervene. And don't forget that these are individuals' ideas, that are philosophies. So it doesn't mean that those that we have already seen or gone through are not valid. No, they are also valid, because I would say that these theories are valid to the formulators and whoever decides to follow them. So we will not say that this man is Vico is saying that yeah, he's saying that God does not intervene directly in historical events or human affairs, and that means that the providence theory is not valid. No, these theories are valid to the formulators. Yeah, but rather indirectly to human beings. He saw history as the evolution of human species, but governed by the directing power or direct power of God or divine providence. So in 1725, Vico published a work titled Principles of a New Science concerning the common nature of nations. And in this work, in this work that he published, he distinguished 3 periods or stages in the development of human history. Now, the first was the theoretic or the divine stage or divine age. The second was the age of the heroes, and the third was the age of men, or the civilized age. So look at the age of divine, yeah, or the theoretic age, the age of heroes, and the age of men, or civilized age. Now, these three ages or stages of development, Vico believed was common in the history of all nations. And that is to say, all nations and civilizations passed through these three stages. So, like Aristotle before, Vico took a sociological view of the development of civilization. Yeah, he established a pattern to start development. Yeah, based upon the nature. This is not bad. Based upon the nature of man as an individual man and as a member of a group, or yeah, of a group or civilization. Now he borrowed much from Plato and Aristotle. Yeah, he did a lot in his analysis of society, and even also borrowed from his word in his analysis, and even from his word. Vico wrote that as an individual, man develops in three stages. So as an individual, man develops in three stages, and so we have childhood, adolescence, or there's also childhood, then from adolescence to maturity or adulthood. So we have that one. So when you're a childhood or adolescent, and so from adolescent then to uh, maturity or an adult. Okay. So a nation or civilization develops also in stages similar to these of the individual. And these stages were the classic or the age of the gods, the age of the heroes, and finally the age of man. And the age of man is what I said that he was talking about, the age of civilization. Now, the theocratic age or the age of the gods is the childhood period of every human society or civilization. That's the beginning or the childhood period. And according to Vico, the age of the gods is the dawn of history, and Vico thought that this was the period following the floods. Yeah, this was the period following the floods. Following the floods, following the end of civilization, when the descendants of Ham, Japheth, and Shem, that is children of Noah, whom without the religion of their father Noah, were lost from one another by wandering about in the wild forests of the earth. They were scattered further as a result of searching for pasture and water. They were reduced at the end of a long period of time to the condition of beasts, of beasts. Now, without speech, and therefore they had no language. They also used gestures. He continued to say that they were awakened from the savage to the human level by violence, thunderstorms. As a result, they developed a religious fear of the gods. They sought shelter in caves out of fear. While living in their caves, they developed an ordered sex life. Instead of using women in common, as was exotic of the beasts, they instituted marriage, gave birth to children, and so they formed a family. They also began to bury the dead, and therefore they came to believe in the immortality of the soul. Religion then became a fundamental factor in human cohesion, dominating human thinking and human relationships, and became one of the basic principles in the development of civilization or a nation. Yeah. So another important result of the awakening to religion was the development of self-awareness. They became moral and responsible human beings. So the first form of social organizing, that's the family, and the religious awakening caused the development of languages among these people. Yeah. So with that, and so I think that's the view. Now, with the development of language came reason, even though it was still weak at this childish or childhood stage. Childhood stage. Okay. So In this theocratic or divine age, human actions and events were attributed to divine providence. And according to Vico, this stage lasted for about 900 years. There was then a transition from the theoretic age or the age of the to the age of heroes, which began when the fathers of the primitive families subjugated the rest of the misled people or savages to make yeah to make to savages and made them they subjected them to savages and made them slaves and dependents. So in this way, communities or households, including the state and dependent, were formed. Yeah, these were formed. And so, as the numbers of slaves and dependents increased, trouble ensued between the household. So, the ruling class and the ruled. So, now people wanted their right and they would say that no, things are not good, we need this. And so, gradually, the slaves and the dependents won the struggle and gained some democratic rights, but they were still excluded from political power because they were denied access to their gods. And so, this was, of course, that is it. So in the age of the gods, government was by one man whom we could call the father despot. So by one man. And the father despot had power of life and death over his family. And that's important. Yeah. So father despot. Force is used. Force is used to establish the will of aristocracy, and the force lies in the power of great heroes and politicians. Now, in the age of heroes, cities began to develop with the nobility and the rulers and the common people as they ruled. So the common people were usually called in the Latin the plebs. Trade and commerce also developed, and the institution of war also introduced. Now people looked upon each other as enemies, and piracy, warfare, and pillage were common. Were common. According to Vico, this age lasted for a long time until they progressed to a higher level, which the age of men. The age of men. What was it? The age of so the age of men corresponds to modern civilization. In this age, all men would recognize themselves as equal in nature. So that's the present civilization or the modern one now, equality, even women. So we are now saying that women were left behind. So therefore, there's equality. Now people are talking about democracy. Let's have oppressive. Let's set up your own government. So he also says that jurisprudence and law are based upon equity and truth as principles. So this is the age. Government take the form of popular commonwealth or republic or to monarchies. Judgments are based upon the merits of the cases as against divine judgments or the Socratic age. So the kind of authority found in this age of men is that of learned men who had a reputation for wisdom. In other words, secularism is dominant in the age of men. Reason and philosophy developed self-awareness or self-consciousness of the laws of nature and the nature of man and also the nature of human society. And so the age of men had two eras, according to Vico. So first was that there was the era of free popular commonwealth or the republics, and second, the era of monarchy. And that is so the age of men. In Vico's view, the history of humanity is all contained between the period of the family monarchy, that is the father despot, and the civil monarchy, that is a of kings, rule of kings. All nations developed in this pattern, which is first the theoretic age or age of the gods, in which the family monarchies arise. Secondly, the age of heroes, which is a period of government by aristocracy of nobles, families, and third, the age of men, which means where there is first free popular commonwealth or republic, that is a democracy, which leads to civil monarchy. Good. And so Vico implied that by this, that history begins with the rule by one man in the family. That's the few rule in the heroic age of an aristocracy. Then the many and all and free popular commonwealth were returned to civil monarchy. So Vico illustrated this idea of or pattern of the rise and fall of civilization with the course of European history and North African history. Yeah, so that's what he used. The illustration began after the fall of the Roman Empire. The Greek and the Roman civilization, according to him, had passed through the theoretic age or the age of gods. It had also passed through the age of the heroes and the age of men. In Vico's view, the age of men was a period of great philosophies in Greece, followed by the same year in Rome. When the Roman Empire fell, the theoretic age or the age of the gods appeared again with the period immediately following the barbarian invasion of the Roman Empire, and that caused the fall of the empire. Christianity rose to prominence, and with the superstitious rites and religious issues that dominated the mental and physical life of the people, there was a return to mute language, or as few people could now read and write. And there was also a return to divine judgment in the form of canonical laws, cultures, and rights in the church. In European history, this period is called the Dark Age, where there was intellectual decay, or the era characterized by intellectual decay, yeah, economic deteriorations and intellectual decay. Now, the period of the 9th to the 10th century, that's AD 800 2000. Now, there was the next was the heroic age, which was the era of feudalism, that from 1100 to 1500 AD, and the feudal laws correspond to the heroes of ancient Greece and Rome. Okay, so the European heroic age closed with the disappearance of feudalism and initiated the age of men. So the age of men was characterized by the rise of monarchies, that is the monarchy in England, France, Sweden, Denmark, Italy, and Germanic states. This modern culture would also decay and fall to give rise to new civilization. And according to Vico, Egypt, Greece, Rome, China, India, as well as Europe had all passed or followed the same pattern in history, and he called this pattern the ideal internal history, traversed in time by every nation in its rise, progress, maturity, decline, and fall. Okay. So Vico combined the cyclical theory of history with the provident theory of history, but he introduced a secular element in the philosophy of history when he wrote that God does not intervene directly in historical or human events. He also introduced the progress view of history in his third stage. He did not, however, make a clear break with the providence of history, since, according to Rico, divine providence still played a vital role in historical events. And indeed, Rico saw divine providence as directory or guiding the development of various types of government. Voltaire actually coined the phrase philosophy of history. Take note, it was Voltaire who actually coined the phrase philosophy of history as the title of a book which he published in 1766, and it gained permanent use in the studies on philosophy of history as the progress of mankind towards reason, liberty, tolerance, peace, and the perfection of the mind in the fields of the arts and sciences. Now he made the break with the providence theory of history by attributing historical events divine providence, not to divine providence per se, but of course to human reasoning and natural occurrences and the universal natural world. So what Voltaire was saying is that all that man needed to do was to be guided by reason in whatever he does. So in such thinking, divine providence had no place. With Voltaire, therefore, the philosophy of history passed its religious phase to its metaphysical phase, that is reason. Now, this metaphysical approach to history was taken up, was taken up by the German philosopher of the late 19th century. Yeah, was taken up by the German philosopher, that is Immanuel Kant. So men like Immanuel Kant, John Friedrich Hegel, and Herder, among others. Now, if you can look at Hegel briefly, look at Hegel and stop. I think it is enough. We have done a lot of these philosophies. Look at only Hegel. Now, Hegel was born in Stuttgart in 1770, and he was educated in the University of Tübingen between 1788 and 1793. He was a product of the age of enlightenment. That was a period that, yeah, he was a product of that. And this age placed emphasis on reason in the explanation of human affairs rather than on divine providence. I think we did enlightenment, so we are conversant with the age of reason or the age of enlightenment. Hegel was one of the most constructive thinkers in modern times and hardly a modern movement and extraordinary thoughts or ideas on history. And even Marxism failed to trace their origin to Hegel. Now his career and philosophy, yeah, were closely linked to the rising fortune of the Prussian state. After a period of teaching in Frankfurt, he became a professor of philosophy at the University of Jena in 1801, and following the defeat of the Prussian army at Jena by Napoleon Bonaparte in 1806, the university was disbanded, and so Hegel became unemployed. In 1816, however, he was appointed the chair of philosophy at the University of Heidelberg. Now, in 1818, the Prussian monarchy appointed him as the head of philosophy department at the University of Berlin, and he held that position until he died in 1831. So you know that he was a great philosopher and even became a head of the Department of Philosophy, yeah, at in the University of Berlin. By training profession, Hegel was a philosopher and not a historian. But in the 1820s, he delivered a series of lectures on philosophy of history, in which he constructed his theory of history. So in this lectures, he actually constructed his theories in history. I hope you are with me. Eh?
Yeah, with you, sir.
Okay, and so in these lectures, he said that what philosophy brings to the study of history is the concept of reason. So his focus was on reason, thinking, reason. And that is the belief that reason is the sovereign of the world, in that the world presents man with a rational process. And so a philosophical account of history must see the reason operating in the course of historical events. And that is what Hegel stood for. It must make clear what is being achieved in history and how these achievements had been brought about. So Hegel equated reason to what he called the spirit. And the essential characteristics of this spirit is self-movement or self-awareness. And so this self-awareness can only be achieved at the human level and in an organized community of persons. That is the state. So according to Hegel, the state is the spirit which abides in the world and realizes itself consciously. And this is so because one cannot become self-conscious or show self-awareness unless one first becomes conscious of another consciousness. And so in nature, there cannot be a state because the spirit is a sleeping spirit and lacks consciousness. It is only when the state presents uh, in consciousness, knowing itself as an existing object can be called a state. And so the self-movement of the spirit, that is the state, to what he called the state of freedom. The state of freedom. So Hegel's theory of history was that the course of world events or the progressive development or achievement of freedom. So achievement of freedom is what everybody strives to achieve. So freedom, that freedom is the essence of, yeah, the ultimate. Everybody will strive to be free, freedom. So achieving of freedom on the part of man. Now, the aim or purpose of history is the full realization of this freedom, so that you would realize freedom, you'll be free. He defines freedom as the voluntary submission to moral authority, or as the free doing of what one is morally obliged to do. Now, his notion of freedom was very was very different from that of the liberals. In other words, the liberal groups or liberal group of people, especially in the early part of the 19th century of his day, who saw freedom in terms of personal, civil, and political liberties. People have their liberties. Okay, but yeah. So according to Hegel, awareness of the true nature of freedom had itself undergone a dialectical development associated with the evolution of various kinds of political institutions in the state as he saw it. Yeah, as he saw it. Now, Hegel, Hegel saw the course of world history and its freedom developed in four main stages, with the center of eternal shifting from east to west. And according to him, conquest, historical progress began in Asia with the Oriental societies of China, India, and Persia, Japan, the actualization of freedom, and it is the absolute perfect of reason. That freedom should be actualized or made concrete. Now, Hegel taught the course of world history and its freedom to have developed in four stages. I think I've already said this. This one is a repetition. Can let me take it up. Yeah, according to him, concrete historical process began in Asia with the Oriental societies of China. Okay, that's what I've already said. It's a repetition. It's according to him. Okay. Yeah. So of course, it continued with those of Greece and Rome, typically culminated. Yeah, culminated. This one I had to culminated. That's what I was telling. Culminated. Yeah, culminated into the Christian culture of the Germanic nations of Western Europe. So, in other words, the history of the world travels from east to west. Simple. Take note of that. Hegel viewed the Asian historical consciousness as the childhood stage of the development of the spirit of freedom. So that's how he saw those in Asia, Asian historical consciousness as the childhood stage. Then the childish civilization of the Oriental world from east where where despotism. So from east where this is where from east where despotism is the only way one man or the ruler was free. He saw Chinese and Indian societies as static. In other words, they were not they were static, remain as they were, with no basis for development of freedom. Now the spirit of their consciousness was that of the family. So the members had the status of children, and not of citizens. There was therefore an absence of consciousness in these societies. This also cannot be accepted since the Chinese and Indians had their own philosophy of history. He said this because he thought Western Europe was superior to others. And so you could see that's why we rebook. In other words, we say that Hegel looked down upon Africa and even the Oriental world, the Asian countries. And so despotism was a form of government appropriate to the people in the Oriental world. By contrast, he saw the Persians as more advanced people, in that the Persian Empire consists of a number of components made of components. Now, each of it retained its own cultural identity. The ruler was not a despot because his powers were restricted. The Persians were therefore a true historical people, and Hegel saw it as the beginning of the development of freedom. Now, the Persians provided the history between the East and the West, in that the collapse of the empire led to the rise and spread of the Greek civilization. So, to Hegel, the Greek civilization constituted a certain stage of world history. It is a stage of the adoration of the spirits, of the state of freedom, of the state of freedom. So, yeah, Greek society saw a breakthrough in the development of individual freedom, which found expression in the political democracy of the Greek city states. So, by the victory over the Persians, the Greeks showed that they were more highly developed people than the Persians. So, in the city states, the area of freedom was expanded. Individualism took root in the notion that some men, but not all men, are free for it. However, Greek society in the end was destroyed because of the struggle between the city states. Greece was superseded by Rome. So, which carried the idea of freedom from them. And this was because Roman society recognized the principle that man is free, although it retained the institution of slavery. Yeah, even though slavery was there, they were still of the view that man or men are free or were free. Now, this was carried over from the Oriental and the Greek civilization, but just as Persians provided the links between the Oriental world and Greece, the Greeks became, became this, so that's Rome. It shifted, the center shifted from Greece to Rome. I think I've already made this point. Now, the significance of the Roman Empire is not relevant. The significance of the Roman Empire in world history lay in the contacts provided with the Germanic nations, the opportunity it afforded for the spread of Christianity, and from there that Christianity spread. Yeah, it spread to other people. So with the rise of the Germanic nations, freedom reached its full realization. Now the barbarians, such as the Goths and the Visigoths, who overran Roman Empire and adopted Christianity and expressed the principle that at all times that men were free and equal. All times that men were free. So men were free and equal. Yeah, so this notion became entrenched in the political institution of Western Europe. And that's, of course, the process of the development of freedom in the world history was completed the Germanic nations of Western Europe. And so this is what Adolf Hitler based on that. Oh, okay, so the Germans were the superior and the Africans, and even including the and the Asians. So that's why even the Jews were wiped off. He felt that no, they were inferior. So why should they remain? They had to be exterminated. In other words, they had to be wiped out of humanity. And so he did that and killed over 6 million Jews. Hegel summed up his theory of history as follows. The Eastern nations knew only that one man is free. The Greek and the Roman world knew that they knew that some men are free, while we know that all men absolutely are free. That is the Germans. Now, Hegel's philosophy of history was based upon his theory of dialectical progression, or the view of struggles and unity of opposites. So, dialectical progression. His dialectical pattern of human history is contained in proposal of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. He proposes. Now, the theory says that for every original concept or idea, which is the thesis, there is an opposite, and that opposite is the antithesis, and the negation That is the conflict between the two. In other words, yeah, so that is the synthesis. In other words, yeah, in other words, the main root of the spirit of freedom is manifested in the Roman world and finds full maturity in the Prussian state of Western Europe, the Germanic states. Hegel's philosophy of history was based upon his theory of dialectical progression, or the view of the okay. Ah, yeah, so the theory says that now the theory says that for every original concept or idea, for every original concept or idea is the thesis. That is, so there's an opposite, or is the antithesis, the antithesis, the antithesis. That is or the negation, the conflict between the two. And that is the negation is the result of the third concept, which is the synthesis. And so the negation, the synthesis. And that is to say that the negation is negated and results is what? And the result is a synthesis. But this synthesis becomes another or a new thesis to give rise to the antithesis and then results in the synthesis. And the process goes on without a stop. And that is the view of Hegel. So Hegel assured, however, that each new thesis is a higher process or a higher state of development. Applying the dialectical method to Hegel's theory of history, the Oriental world represents the thesis. So the Asian society, that the Oriental world, represents the thesis. The Greek and the Roman world, the antithesis, and the Germanic nations of Western Europe, the synthesis of history. The process does not repeat itself, but Hegel, according to historical precepts, ended with the oppression instead of his own day. He observed that America might be the land of the future, where in the ages that lie ahead, the burden of history would be revealed. He did not, however, indicate how these ages that lie ahead would fit into his pattern of human history. And so there are some critiques against Hegel. Objections have been raised. Yeah, objections have been raised. Yeah, make it happen. Have been raised to Hegel's theory of history, both by philosophers and historians. Yes, yeah, there are some objections. First of all, there's the objection that the social organization of freedom alone does not constitute the theme of history. In other words, critics say that freedom is not the most important thing. They argue that there are other important things in history, for example, the role of religion in the development of man and civilization, the rise of nation states, whether in Europe or elsewhere, and commercial and individual developments. And so, yeah, and the rise of science, which has had a great impact on history. So, yeah, that had that. So, in the second place, yeah, in the second, Hegel's account of world history was thin and also ethnocentric, and the arrangement was at what? Yeah, and the arrangement was okay. So I think there's an error here. Yeah. So now what we are saying here is that if we look at his it was ethnocentric. In other words, viewing the German to be the superior, and then looking down on the Asians and the Africans. So there are errors, I have to correct them here for you. Yeah, so how he arranged it is centered only around the Mediterranean and Western Europe. Yeah, so let me just delete this from there. This is not possible. Yeah. Now, looked at history from the point of view of Western European writers, so that he excluded the Slavic nations such as Russia and the Eastern European nations. He also excluded the Arab world and Africa, except Egypt. Hegel regarded Africans as unhistorical people, And he wrote that black people are capable of neither development nor education, as you see them today. So they have always been. That is Hegel. As you see them, so they have always been. And that's what he said about Africa. So we were been lost in the system. And again, the American Indians and Native Americans have also been excluded from Hegel's theory of history. And these are some of the shortcomings, in other words, some of the criticisms leveled against Hegel. Thirdly, there's a criticism that Hegel gave an incorrect analysis of the cultures of the Oriental world. Now, the societies of China and India were not static, but he said they were static. They were not static. Yeah, they were not static. They had their own dynamic cultures, and the Greek philosopher borrowed the notion of the golden age from ancient Egyptians. Yeah, yeah. And ancient Egyptians were black people. Yeah, they were black people. I know that is Kemets. Ancient Egyptians who were, yeah. They also borrowed the mathematical notion of, the mathematical notion and theology and theological notion from the Egyptians. Yeah, theological notion. They borrowed it from the Egyptians. And Herodotus says that the Greeks borrowed the knowledge of chemistry from the Egyptians, medicine as well. In any case, the 365 calendar was first worked out by the ancient Egyptians. Again, St. Augustine seems to have borrowed the idea of the struggle between the unity of God, between the city of God, between the city of God and the city of Satan from the Oriental world. Yeah, from the Oriental world. From the Oriental world. So a philosopher called Zoroaster. Yeah, Zoroaster, who lived about 1000 BC, and he propounded that. Yeah, Zoroaster lived about 1000 BC, and he propounded that the history of the universe is a struggle between two powers: the power of good and the power of evil, and that man is the key figure in this struggle. So Zoroaster's doctrine influenced the Greek thinkers, the early Christian writers and philosophers, and even modern Western philosophers. Yeah, so the Chinese and the Indians had their own philosophy of history and philosophy of the universe. And so their society was not static, as Hegel said or has said. And so this is yeah. Again, or fourthly, the Germanic state did not really represent a higher level of freedom. Yeah. So the Persian state was also not liberal or democratic, as he put it. It was an autocratic state with little room for development of full freedom. And even in the 1820s, there were Negro and radical movements demanding freedom and liberty in the Germanic states. So how on earth would Hegel say that they were the superior or they reached the apex? So again, England had a constitutional monarchy, and freedom was all evidence that it was in the Germanic states, even that the Germanic states. So why should we say Germany? So finally, there's the criticism that Hegel failed to achieve what he set out to make history more intelligible. His physical approach to history rendered it less intelligible. And so we can say that Hegel's theory of history does not really fit into the actual course of historical events, and his work has been regarded as one example of how theories about the past can be interpreted. I think these are the criticisms leveled against Hegel. So in exams, if I ask you to explain four or provide four criticisms against Hegel's theory of history, I think it will not be difficult for you to provide, and I think that is a very important question. provide what scholars point out as some significant criticisms against um, Hegel's theory of history. So here you just explain the theory of history, no more than half a page, not more than one paragraph, about one paragraph, and then you venture into the criticism, certain example of some of the things that he said to corroborate some of the issues that we will raise here. And that is so, as I've already said, these are individual philosophies, and you can also come out with your philosophy. Now that you have done this course, you can come out with your philosophy, but coming out with the philosophy, you must have read well extensively to know, because people would raise issues and you cannot just say it and go and say that I don't have. Yeah, you should be able to, as last time I was explaining it. Yeah, you need to be a scholar. You must have read extensively to know things so that you have reasons. You can't just say it and go. No, you have to come out why and substantiate it with cogent arguments and facts. Okay. Yeah, so individual philosophies. I don't know whether since the time that we started this course, some of you have come out with their own personal philosophies. Anyway, let me pause here and let me ask you questions or comments or anything that you have with respect to the progress view of history. That now is not only divine providence, but you see, men are capable of doing things, even though they did not, they knew that God, that is the beginning, we are guided by God. But as you progress, then of course you become matured and you begin to do things. And that is someone's view. Thank you very much. So questions on this?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, this Kawasaki.
Yeah,
I
Honorable Saki,
I
can
just
you
want to
hear?
find out whether we are still in the modernization age.
Whether we are still in the modernization age?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so that is someone's philosophy, someone's idea. But if you are to go by what he put forward, yeah, so man get better and better as the days pass by. So that's why I was even citing an example. Now, yeah, so at first there was no even cars in Ghana, but the cars that even came, the cars that were first introduced. But now see the cars that we have. You see, now we have aeroplane. And even now, at first, I remember when I was at the University of Cape Coast here, the phones that we were using, no, we could not even access. Yeah, you could not use it to download articles. No, there was nothing like that. But even now, the phones that we use are computers, and you can be at the comfort of your home, download scholarly articles, books, and what have you. You can do everything. You can even register your courses with your phone. With the phone, you can do everything. You can now have classes like you're attending class and like what you're doing. Things so that is someone's. If you want to be adherent or a follower of the person, then fine. So they are modernity. Even now, you're talking about the era of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence. We are even wondering. So a time will come that some of us at the university we have stopped giving assignment to students. Why? Because the error that you find yourself, you will not give assignment to a student for the student to go and sit and write. No, no. Why? That's why we just get AI and other things to just help, and we'll do anything. We'll not even look at it. Yes, and we'll bring it. So you see, and so we are now looking at how we can now adopt it in the academia so that, of course, you can also use it. You see, things are changing so fast. Things are changing. At first, if somebody had even completed middle school, we were talking about sixth form, and then so O level, A level, and all those things. But now, see, you have young people, somebody at the age of 13 at the university. So, see, things are changing. Anyway, it depends on you, the philosophy. See, I said that they are valid to the formulator, and anybody who chooses to follow. So once you want to follow, then you can argue. If you had done Karl Marx, historical materialism, you then realize that you also come out, oh, everything is the course of history. I think I chipped in a lot of Karma's issues about the attainment of character society. That's why I'm not treating it. That's the I give you the focus, not that the cast of his work. And so I feel that we have had something. Looking at the time, don't want to bore you so much with things, and that will give you time to do these things. Yeah. Okay. Any other? Today I've not heard Mr. Patrick Edu. Are you here? Mr. Patrick, are you here today?
Yes, sir. I came in late. I
Oh,
just
okay.
joined.
Very sorry. And unfortunately, to this, the other latter part of it, I was editing the notes. You see, I gave it to
Okay.
somebody to type my notes for me. I was going to use it to do PowerPoint, but the one that I've done, I can't trace it. I think it was on my other machine that I couldn't trace it. So this one, I had to quickly edit it and use it. Because the one I've done, the PowerPoint, I can't trace it. Okay, so that's why I'm using this one. And there's some small errors that I was trying to edit them. Okay, yeah. So um, yeah, just Align,
Oh,
Mr.
Doctor,
Align. Yeah. So based on the
Doc.
things that we have discussed, have you thought of coming out a philosophy, your own philosophy, or what do you think?
Yes, please. Yes. I am of an idea that like my philosophy is as humans we should be able to try to bring something new into existence each and every day. You see, looking at even when we look at the modernization, especially the modernization, we started from far behind and look at where we are now, like what you made mention of. So I was in the position of supporting civilization. Civilization.
Okay, okay, I see.
Yes.
Okay,
Because
yeah.
for
So
now we are using our phones. You can be here and then attending lectures that make uh, everywhere in the world.
yeah,
You can be
yeah,
in Ghana.
yeah. Yeah, some lecturers are teaching African history at universities in US, UK, everywhere. They're teaching. A time will come. I'm saying a time will come that even you'll be in Ghana here, you'll be employed in UK or everywhere, and they will be paid because you can do everything with. Yeah, things are changing. A time will come. So if you Africans, if you don't improve our economies, a time will come that will suffer because a time will come that workers who are well trained will not work here. They will be in Ghana, but they will be working elsewhere. Yeah, and very soon. Yeah, because even the time will come that I think the use of cars will be a thing of the past. So, in fact, the other we are about about ushering in. You don't know anyway. Things are changing so fast. Yeah, so I think at the appropriate time we have to throw more light on some of these issues. Let me introduce you to few critical aspects of the history. Maybe is history a science or not? Just give you some few ideas about them. But there are no time. Yeah, so now the critical aspect, the nature of historical explanation. I just want to have an idea about the nature of historical explanation. Now, explanations in history. What? So this is also another where we have philosophers coming in and trying to explain. So explanations in history raise very puzzling questions, and historians share the view or believe that to know something means to know the causes of that something. So to know something, and this one too, I think there are some errors. I have to edit them. Because I couldn't trace the one I've done PowerPoint. So this one, I asked somebody to type. The person made a mistake. Couldn't see my handwriting well. So that's the problem. Now, to know something means to know the cause of that something. The question is, what are the causes of that something? And how do they determine the causes of events? How many causes, for instance, does one need for historical explanation? Alternatively, how does a historian distinguish between certain secondary and primary causes, or between immediate and long term? This is one of the one of the type. Yeah, and long-term causes of an event. So how do we determine? Now, how do we determine? Okay, so immediate and long-term causes of an event. Again, what determines the order and hierarchy of the causes? How do you know the order and the hierarchy of the causes? How do we determine them? Yeah, so the order and the hierarchy of things, how do we determine them? In terms of which historian would construct his narrative of the event. Now, all these questions are different to, yeah, they are difficult to answer. It's not different. All these questions are difficult to answer. So you are going to attempt this one. They are difficult to answer. Yeah, or to be determined. And they are solved by simply using the historical determinism, yeah, of Karl Marx. Historical determinism of Karl Marx. Please, I'm coming 1 minute. Yeah, hold on. Hey. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so now, yeah, so I was talking about these puzzling questions. Karl Marx said, that all historical events are determined by economic factors. Yeah, and August Comte also said that anything that cannot be proven by scientific method is not history or scientific knowledge. So the historian, apart from dealing with the facts, the fact that you come across, also deals with the motive and the purposes. That's the issue here. Apart from you dealing with the fact, you also deal with the motive and the purposes behind the historical events. Philosophers claim that historical historians claim that historical explanations are governed by general laws because they are scientific explanations. Philosophers rather who are saying that, they claim that historical explanations are governed by general laws because they are scientific explanations. Now, the idea was advocated by a philosopher called Karl Hempel, and he was a professor of philosophy. And he wrote an article entitled "The Functions of General Laws in History," Karl Hempel. And the article was published in 1942. And it is generally known as the covering law model. And they are all capital, covering law, because it's a proper noun. Covering law model. So, I did everything. So covering law model. Yeah, so covering law model. And that is it. Covering law model. So the main thesis or point of view of Karl Hempel covering law model is that all explanations, so you take note of covering law model, all explanations take the form of relating one event. So you relate one event, that is the event to be explained, which cause or condition that event. That is the one to be what explained. That is to explain that point. That's when, no, this is not making sense. So what he's saying here is that now all explanations take the form of relating one event, that is the event to be explained, which cause or condition that event. So you call that is when one is said to explain an event, one refers to another event or set of events of a type which has always been observed to accompany the kind of event which is to be explained. Therefore, to explain an event, it is to show how it was connected or related to another event and why it happened the way it did, the very way it did. In the second place, an event is explained when it is brought under a general law or a generalization. So an event is because it's scientific, and therefore that what this kind of explanation consists of general laws established by empirical events or observation. Now, so the explanation becomes an instance of a general rule, stating that given certain initial conditions and events or events surrounding, surrounding a particular issue, this may happen. This kind of explanation oh, this one is not supposed to be here. Yeah, so the explanation becomes an instance of a general rule stating that given certain initial conditions, an event or event similar to that the one to be explained will occur or take place. Such a rule accepts a regularity of events, and it is universally accepted when an event of a specified kind occurs at a certain place and time. A similar event would occur at a place and time which is related to the event at the place and time of the first event. And so, according to this hypothesis, the explanation of a given event consists first by stating a universal law. You have to have a law that with this A, B, and C, this will happen, or a set of laws. And secondly, stating the existence of a set of initial conditions, so that from the two statements, a third statement is deduced, describing the event in question. And so, according to the covering law model of explanation, all causal explanations are scientific explanations, and that is historical explanations come under the covering law model since they deal with causal explanations. Good. Secondly, explanations and prediction go together. Explanations and prediction they go together. It's prediction. So in the third place, the covering law model involves the formulation of true generalizations. For instance, if a person swallows maybe ascetic, it would lead to death. So the swallow, so it means that anytime that you swallow this particular drug, it means that you will die. If a person swallows lava ascetic, it is connected to death. Now, so lava ascetic is usually connected with death. So once it follows that if and whenever anyone swallows 100 grams of arsenic, the person will die. So it means that the swallow of this one of arsenic, it means that you are going to die. Therefore, the consumption of arsenic gives the causal explanation of the person's death. This implied that it implies, or the implication is that can the covering law now the important question is that can the covering the question is, can the covering law model of explanation be applied to historical studies or to historical events? Can it be applied to historical events. That's the important question. The big question: can we apply it to the historical? Listen, now the covering law model. Yeah, can we apply this to historical events? Now, the covering law model is generally accepted by philosophers. Yeah, it's generally accepted by philosophers. Yeah, it gained. Yeah, it gained worldwide acceptance. The covering law model gained worldwide acceptance. Gained, yeah, among philosophers of history, among philosophers. Yeah, among philosophers, it gained worldwide. Yeah, acceptance among philosophers, but historians have generally been skeptical. They have been, yeah, but historians have been skeptical of its application to historical events. So the covering law model, I think this is a repetition. Why? For example, can we say that Louis the 15th died unpopular because he pursued political policies that were detrimental to French national interests? So the question is there a law implicit in this historical statement? Now, the historian will say that he is not following a general law. No, he's not interested in following a general law. In his explanation of Louis the 14th on popularity, yeah, he's not interested in that. Yeah, he's not interested in that. So maybe the thing that he did, the factor that led to his fall, we would sit them, but not that he was unpopular. Yeah, because of some of the things that he did that made him. So anybody who will do that, would the person also be yeah, seen as not popular? Okay, so now there will be no general law that would also be linked to the popularity or otherwise of historical agents. But you look at certain factors that made him unpopular, the thing that he did. So that would differ from from one individual to the other, and that's very important. Okay, so that is it. So historian would, yeah. So historian would then argue that it's because of certain policies that he took that made him unpopular, and not that there are certain general law that should, yeah, that should determine such popularity. Of course, what he did that were instrumental are those that maybe you touch on. Ah, no, I think this is not the one I'm supposed to use. No, the one I have to use. I think. Okay. Please, I'm coming. Just wait. Let me check something. I beg you. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I think let us end our class here. I think that the one I wanted to, because I cannot trace my what do you call it, the proper one that I have done, my slice. I was using another one, but that one I've seen there are some errors. The one who typed did not type well. There are some errors. So I'm checking for another one which are devoid of errors, but I'm not seeing it now. So let me search for that one. Next time that we meet. I think we'll
Okay.
only do one more topic. Yeah, we'll meet once. I think we'll look at that briefly. Objectivity is history of science. So look at objectivity, explanation of objectivity, and it's history of science on that. So and then we'll be done. So only two topics, some small topics that we'll be looking at here. And then so had not been because of the errors in the typing, I was going to finish it. I needed a few time to finish it up. So the Latin America, we only look at just one more topic and we are done. But
Okay.
yeah, but it seems there are some errors with the one I'm using. I have to create the original one. So I suppose that let's end here. I'll sort that one out. We'll find
Okay.
time and meet for the last. We'll look at only one topic, Latin America, and finish
Okay,
this week.
sir.
Run it until up,
Okay.
and it will be
Okay.
done so that I can push. When I get the correct one, I can push it. If I'm still unable to tweet it, I will edit this one, write it well, and make it a bullet, and then
Okay.
we'll use it. We'll see. Because as it stands, there are some errors, and I don't want to. Yeah, use it now. Okay,
Okay.
so yeah. Any other question before we end? So then, when you get time, just be reading about explanation in his objectivity and only is history a science or not. Just simple. These are all the things that we and then bring our lesson to an end. That's okay. Okay, so if there are no issues, then let us end here. And maybe we'll continue. I'll just draw your attention and continue next time. I wish you all the
Okay,
best.
Doc.
Enjoy the rest of
Okay.
the
Thank you
day.
very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir.
Bye bye.
Bye.